Welcome to the Shift Method Podcast. I'm your host, Coach D. My goal is to shift the culture of health and fitness through evidence-based coaching and engaging content for the public and health fitness professionals alike. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you all enjoy this episode.
What's good, everyone? Coach D here with the Shift Method Podcast. Hope you are having a wonderful day. This is episode number 52 of the Shift Method Podcast, coming out on Monday, October 2nd. A couple quick announcements like we always do. Hey, it's the first Monday of the month. Y'all know what that means, or at least you should know what that means. That means we got the monthly newsletter coming out. This is going to be October's newsletter. So if you haven't subscribed already, no worries. Just go ahead and head to theshiftmethod.org. It'll automatically prompt you for your name and email, and it gives you some awesome updates of what's going on in my life and what's going on with the Shift Method, whether that's a summary of the podcast, YouTube videos, exclusive sales and deals, and other things that are going on with the business. So be sure to head over to theshiftmethod.org to check that out. Otherwise, we still got merch on the store, right? If y'all want to get shirts, pants, shorts, you name it, we got it. Be sure to check that out on the Shift Method store. And depending on, what's going on in the next couple of weeks, since I'm recording this a little early, I might still have a couple time slots open. I had that Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 7 a.m. open. So if you're in the South Florida area, specifically Boca Raton, and you want to come train with me at Johnny O's Gymnasium, I have a few of those time slots open. If you're looking to change your life, you can just message me on Instagram or on my website, click any of those take action buttons, and we'll see if we could be a good fit together. But that's enough about me. We're going to go ahead and get with our guest today. Again, this is episode number 52. And with me, I got a guest who I feel like at this time might have been maybe 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago that we had the opportunity to meet each other. And that is my man, Kyle Sessions. Kyle, do you mind introducing yourself to the people, please?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. What's going on? My name is Kyle Sessions, and I am a strength conditioning coach in the Palm Beach County area. And specifically, I work out of Spanish River High School as a football strength conditioning coach. And I'll also be the boys weightlifting coach coming up here in the winter.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Appreciate it, man. You also forgot to mention a guy who lifts some heavy ass kettlebells and weights, dude. Listen, if you see this guy on Instagram, dude, he is a strong man. And I believe the first time we met was actually at the Axiom Kettlebell certification course, I want to say.
Yeah, we've done quite a few of those. We haven't had any this year, but we are actually planning to host like a kettlebell social of some sort early in the spring of 24. So be on the lookout for that. But yeah, I've done quite a number of kettlebell certifications through Axiom and other organizations for a good 10 years now. I started playing around with kettlebells in 2013. And I was like, you know what? I really like swinging these around. I want to get more information, get more, base knowledge of how to utilize these, not only for myself, but whoever I'm going to be working with. And I'm going to do a certification. So at the time, the big dog was the RKC, which is the, for those that don't know, the Russian kettlebell certification. And at the time I was living in Salinas, California. And, this is a pretty expensive certification. It's 3 days, 8 hours a day. It's very hands-on. You're working out for 80% of the time. It's not like a lot of these other ones that you go to where you study, listen to a lecture, and you do some micro workouts here and there. No, you're getting your ass whooped for 8 hours, and you've got to test out on all the movements, so you've got per weight class, right? So I was about 200 pounds at the time, and like, all right, here's your 53-pound bell. You got to make sure you get this many reps with press, squat, clean, swing, all that good stuff. And oh, by the way, on the last day before you graduate, you have a 100-rep 5-minute snatch test. Good luck.
Dang.
So yeah. So, and like I said, it's very expensive certification. I think at the time it was probably somewhere around like $1,300 to $1,500.
Damn.
And even just 10 years ago, that was a lot of money for a cert. But I ate it, and I was like, I'm gonna see what this is all about. And a very, very humbling experience. I actually didn't pass my first certification. I failed my first certification, and it was on a couple technicalities of a couple lifts where like I didn't have my arm completely locked out, or I didn't have my shoulder like completely compacted in. And at the time, the idea was, the instructors that were teaching the course, like, if you cannot successfully 100% perform these movements to perfection, how can we expect you to teach them to clients, right? And, I kind of understood it at the time, but, fast forward to now, like, it's the way I teach and coach and the way that we do it at Axiom is far less dogmatic and militarized. It's a lot more flexible to interpretation and point of view. But that first experience that I had in 2013 really it stuck with me.
Yeah.
Because I don't necessarily come from military background, but I have a lot of close family and friends that were military, and I've just kind of adopted certain traits with my work ethic and my own training. And, that experience in California really, lit a fire. And failure oftentimes really puts a fire under your ass too. So
yes, it does.
I was pretty upset that I failed the cert, and, all this money went down the drain. And I just kept working at the skills and working. And I actually did a couple more certifications over the years, but I did one down here in South Florida through the SFG, which for those that don't know is the Strong First Gear. And it's essentially, and I couldn't even tell you honestly what these two organizations are up to these days. I know kettlebells have, they're still pretty popular, but as far as like kettlebell education is concerned, it's not quite as popular as it used to be, at least in my opinion. When you compare it to like the early to mid, 2000s to like 2010s, right? It's a lot more mainstream now. It's a lot more, fluid. You see all these guys that do the flows and flips and stuff down in South Beach. But anyway, just kind of reeling it back in, I did this SFG down in Dania Beach, and not as strict as the RKC, but, based on my prior experience being at another formal certification like this, I did very well. And I had a few years of training under my belt. It was no big deal. Force was no problem. And that just kind of like solidified and validated like just the few years of work that I put in one-on-one, not with anybody else, or seeking out any extra help, just doing some troubleshooting on YouTube and whatnot. But got that under my belt. And yeah, I mean, really ever since, kettlebells have been a big part of my training in terms of my own routine. I've gone through periods where, I've done nothing but kettlebell work, just heavy lifts, conditioning, so on and so forth. These days, and I would say most of the time, and how they're traditionally used as, as accessory movements, but definitely still conditioning for aerobic output, anaerobic power, stuff of that nature. I do have a full fleet of kettlebells at my house, all the way up to, over 200 pounds. And yeah, I mean, and people are like, well, what do you need a 200-pound kettlebell for? And it's like, what can you do with that? Well, I can still deadlift it. I can swing it. I can get a few cleans with it. Obviously, I'm not going to try to do a snatch or a clean and press, but it also opens up opportunities for me. Like if I want to go out to an open field and just tie a strap to the bell and, go for a nice long walk, or, just do some high intensity drags or stuff like that. It's opened up other avenues of exercise selections. But in terms of my clients, I don't do a whole lot of kettlebell training with my clients. The majority of people that I work with, I mean, now I'm in the high school setting, it's a little bit different, but as far as Gen Pop is concerned, I've found that, just getting people into a foundation of hinge mechanics is tough enough. And, the swing being a high velocity based movement, it's way up the hierarchy in terms of like, if anybody's familiar with the OPT model, it's way deep into that power phase, right? And there's a lot of boxes you got to check before you get to that point.
Yes.
So, after like a year or two of working with somebody, we might start playing with some swings, but definitely get in some goblet squats, right? Because those are super comfortable and easy to teach. Kettlebells are great for carries and locomotion type exercises and stuff like that. So I still sprinkle them in. But, you know, in terms of my own personal fitness, it's the kettlebells are a big game changer for sure.
Yeah, man, they're fun. I remember when I started learning about them in undergrad, and you know, definitely the swing and like you said, the goblet squat is a really good foundational. Or not, well, the swing is a good movement, but definitely like a just basic kettlebell deadlift can be sometimes easier for people to digest as compared to
Yeah,
like
definitely.
a barbell deadlift, right?
Oh,
And
way
I'm
easier.
oh yeah, 100% because it's just like people when the bar gets like near their shins, they're like, I don't know what to do, man. Like, where does it go? But if it just like just
Right.
drop the bell straight down between your
Mm-hmm.
legs, like, oh, okay, I got you, I
Mm-hmm.
got you. So it definitely helps
Right.
clean up for people.
For
Um,
sure.
and I think one of my coaches, I want to say he probably had that certification because one of our classes we did in my undergrad, it was a required class at the time. I think it was called exercise leadership, where it focused on like the anaerobic side of things, but we used a lot of kettlebell strength training. And he
Yeah.
was talking about like he would always say like, you know, a Russian would never touch a kettlebell without with his shoes on. So we'd always take our shoes off. We go
Yeah.
over the swing, the press, the clean, like all that stuff every day.
Yeah. Love it. Love
Yes,
it.
sir. Yes, sir. Well, very cool, man. And you know, mentioning about some of your teaching in Axiom, I'll be sure to put my podcast with Joe Drake down here, the man who runs the Axiom Fitness Academy, which I know Kyle is a part of now. And I gotta ask, this is interesting because I first got into YouTube, specifically like the fitness side of YouTube, around like the late 2000s, early 2010s. So, who was like your like go-to YouTube fitness person at the time? Do you remember who that was? Because I feel like that
Late
was like the golden age
2000s.
of like fitness for like YouTube, man.
It was. I mean, in my opinion, it was. Trying to think back, late 2000s to 2010. So I was like, I graduated high school in 2009, and then I graduated college in 2012. So I'm trying to think back to that time period. You remember the Hodge twins?
I remember the Hodge
Okay,
twins.
so those
Back in the
guys, first of
gym,
all, were
dude. Those guys were
hysterical.
insane.
Yeah, those guys were hysterical. I think they do like a political podcast now, so that was like a
Yes,
complete 180.
it's so
But
funny, dude.
is it?
Yes.
To be honest, like I don't use YouTube hardly for anything these days. But back then, I watched a lot of Hodge twins. I feel like at the time, I mean, obviously CrossFit was exploding during
Hmm.
that time, so there was a lot of that base. I was, in terms of like my strength conditioning education and just like powerlifting experience and strongman and stuff, I still followed like a lot of the West Side Method
Mm.
guys, like the Louis Simmons, the Dave Tates, the Mark Bells. I followed a lot of powerlifting footage on YouTube. Didn't really get quite into the sports stuff yet. That
Mm.
wasn't until like post 2012. I'm trying to think of what else. And I think most guys, when they start working out, and even these days, usually the common like internet motivation is bodybuilding,
Yeah, yeah,
right? It's not usually powerlifting or strongman or anything like that. It's usually bodybuilding, right? Because who doesn't
absolutely.
want to get jacked? So you can't go wrong with all of the golden era, like Ronnie Coleman
Oh yeah.
stuff, obviously Arnold, but like all of the big dogs that won the Olympias back in the day, like just the classic 21st century Olympia champs. I followed all of that footage. And it was more so again just like motivation.
Yes.
When I was like middle school, high school, I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get yoked. I'm gonna be a
Heck yeah.
bodybuilder one day. And then, just realizing after a few years of solid training, it's like, all right, maybe bodybuilding's not in the cards, but I'm still gonna, use these guys as motivation because, it amps you up. These guys have put these videos together. They put
Absolutely.
some intense training clips together and they put the playlist on and, what else do you need? I'd love to start my day before my workout. I'm sipping my pre-workout and I pull up a YouTube vid and I get amped up. 30 minutes later, I'm ready to go. You know what I'm
Heck yeah,
saying?
man. Heck yeah.
But yeah, I'm trying to think of what else. Again, it's just been such a long time since I've done YouTube. Who were your guys back in the day?
So it's funny. I did like the Hodge twins a lot when they were just, they
Yeah.
did the comedy and the workouts. My other big guy who I used to watch, which also took like a similar route, he like is now very political, so I don't really watch too much about it. But Elliot Hulse, who
I
was
was
like,
literally just about to say that.
yeah, if people would call him the third Hodge twin because they kind of look alike. So I watched
Yeah, they
him.
kind of right.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
Elliot Hulse was a big one.
yes.
And
He kind of like
definitely,
jump started, I feel like, for the fitness industry, man. He was a big player back then.
yeah, and honestly, probably had a hand in, veering me in the direction of strength conditioning.
Yeah.
I really liked Elliot. I liked what he had going on, and that guy had been putting out stuff since like 2005.
Yes.
So I liked a lot of his work, and he's in the out of the St. Pete, Tampa area. I'm
Yes.
still certain, but yeah, he
Yes.
was a good one. Elliot was a good one for sure.
For motivation, I went to CT Fletcher. Had to
Yeah,
watch
CT
CT pulling up
Fletcher
some
was
arm
like,
workouts, man.
yeah, CT Fletcher was like at the tail end of that era. And I
Mhm.
remember when I first started seeing his stuff on YouTube, I'm like, who the hell is this guy?
I'm
And
like,
I'm like,
steroids or not, dude. Like, you are a freaking beast, man.
yeah, like you just can't argue with like that mentality and like that work ethic. It doesn't matter if
Yep.
you're gonna go the natty route or whatnot. I mean,
Yes.
you have to respect the work, you
Absolutely.
know. And
Absolutely.
that definitely CT was a big one that fired me up for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And
it's
I had like a calisthenics phase in high school. I feel
did
like
you?
there's like progressions, there's the bodybuilding phase, there's
Sure.
the squat phase, and then I had like a
Yeah.
big calisthenic phase in high school. And so Bar Brothers was a big one for me as well.
Bar Brothers. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Trying to think of what else. When I started getting into strongman and stuff, I would watch like all the ESPN classics of like World's Strongest Man.
Yes. Yes.
Every now and then you throw on ESPN at like 2 a.m. You catch like vintage footage from like
Yes.
1996, and those are still fun to watch too. So
Yeah, man.
just like you know, great feats of strength and or discipline in terms of how it relates to fitness. That stuff has really given me the foundation in terms of how I coach, how I teach, how I look at progressing, and just like knowing what people are really capable of.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's one thing to say you're training hard, but when you look at the various types of athletes that are out there, and I'm not even saying in terms of like fitness, but you look at football, you look at rugby, you look at gymnastics,
Hmm.
right? And just the mental fortitude that it takes to not only put your body in certain positions to perform, but just the grit and the determination and the willpower and the stress that you
Yes.
have to endure to complete these feats of athleticism. That's what really gets me going. And
Absolutely.
competition. I love working at the high school now over at River. I love working with the football team, obviously, because we're doing strength conditioning stuff, we're lifting, we're working out. But that competition aspect, like I still got that fire, man.
Oh
We
yeah.
had a really great game the other night against Park Vista. It was our second district game, and of course we won, and we're 4-0
Let's
now.
go.
And I was telling the boys, I was like, man, I know I'm not that much older than you guys, but like I was ready to put on pads last night and bust some heads, and you know, like there's still that little kid in me that wants to compete.
Yeah, man. We're all just, I always say adults are just kids that grew up, man. That's all we are.
Right,
We still have all
right.
those same desires and dreams, dude. But that's
Oh
really
yeah.
dope, man. Very,
And
very
that's and
cool.
that's really what kind of like keeps my fire going in terms of just like keeping up my own personal
Yeah,
fitness. It looks a lot different, as time goes on, but having that competition, that competitive edge, that little fire inside you, that's what really keeps me going.
absolutely, man. Now you talked a little about like your background and kind of, getting into the certs and getting into training. What kind of like kickstarted you getting into fitness personally? Was it athletics? Was it your parents' combination? Like what is kind of like your origin story, if you will?
Honestly, I can't really narrow it down to one thing. It's been like an accumulation of things over my lifetime. It really kind of started out, and this wasn't even sports related, but where I grew up in Southeast Houston, Texas, which is right
Okay.
off the bay. I'm very close to the water. It's not like South Florida at all.
Now
It's,
your Instagram name makes sense, man. Lone Star Strength, right?
yeah. So I grew up on the ass end of the Gulf of Mexico in Houston, Texas. And, I grew up in a rural part of town. I mean, obviously it's Texas. It wasn't quite like what everybody thinks Texas is, because that part of Houston is very industrial. It's Houston. There's over 6 million people there. All things petrochemical, gas, electric, plastics, you name it. But I grew up in a rural part of town. I grew up on about 3 acres. We had what some people would deem a farm, but we had a barn in the back. We had horses. We had all the animals, goats, pigs, rabbits, all that stuff. And I grew up showing livestock through most of my childhood, right? And it's for those that don't know, when you raise livestock, it's basically like having show dogs, except they're farm animals, right? Yeah. And we show them we auction them off for charity and for scholarships, and it's for meat production and all that stuff, agriculture, all that jazz. Anyway, there's a lot of work that comes with that. It's a lot of manual labor, right? It's a lot of hauling feed around and hauling hay and shoveling shit. Like I talk to kids, these days, and we talk about discipline and hard work and all that stuff. And it's like, dude, I shoveled shit for 10 years to get where I'm at. You know what I'm saying? Right. So getting back to agriculture, right? When I'll give you a scenario. So say you want to raise a goat, right? You get a baby goat. You go buy the baby goat from whatever breeder or rancher or whatever, and you bring him home, and it's like getting a new cat or a new dog. It's cute at first, and you want to pet him and hang out and take pictures and stuff like that, but it was never like that. These were projects, right? These were not like pets. These were projects that we were going to see through to the very end. And my sister and I were raised like, don't get attached. Like this is work. This is work. And don't start getting sentimental, because they're not going to be here for forever. And again, there's a lot of work that's involved. You're shoveling shit, you're hauling feed around. And at the time, I'm in elementary school, and my dad pulls up in the big Dodge mega cab with a bunch of 50-pound feed sacks in the back, and he's like, all right, give me a hand.
Yep.
And as an 8 or 9-year-old kid, like that's
it's like your entire body weight almost.
yeah. And he's standing at the tailgate, and I'm here holding my little arms up, and he's not throwing them at me, but he's gently holding or handing me over these 50-pound feed sacks, and I'm trying not to die as I walk into the barn with him. But it really started out with that, just like manual labor. Right. And of course, like growing up in Texas, sports are big. Obviously, football is huge. I played basically all the sports. I played Little League baseball, soccer, basketball. Eventually, when I got into high school, started playing football, which I wouldn't recommend waiting until high school to start playing football. The only reason why I started when I did was because my mom didn't let me play Little League football, much like many other kids around the world. Their mom doesn't want them playing football because they don't want to get hurt.
Of course.
Ironically, although I didn't play football until high school, I suffered a number of injuries, most of them not sports related. I was a very fragile kid growing up. I have broken in my lifetime almost a dozen bones.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And we're talking just from like dumb shit, like falling. In second grade, I broke my left elbow on the playground, just falling. I just fell wrong and broke my elbow. 6 weeks after I got the cast off of that arm, it was opening day of baseball season, and I had on my baseball socks, and the living room of my parents' house was wood floors. First step out of my bedroom into that wood floor, I slipped, feet went out in front of me, fell back, threw my right hand out, boom, there goes that right elbow.
Oh my
And
God.
that was 6 weeks after the first cast, right? So again, like, I was a very fragile child growing up. I was, I'm still fairly like lean, slim guy, but I was the skinny kid, right? And it was tough being the skinny weak kid who was always getting hurt. And again, thinking back to my dad throwing me the 50-pound feed sacks, like, I had to learn to like toughen up a little bit,
Yeah.
So by the time I got into the middle school and high school era, I started getting an interest into working out because we were doing it with our sports teams. And at the same time, I have an older brother who enlisted in the Air Force. And he was a drill sergeant for a number of years. And naturally, my brother was my best friend. I adopted a lot of those traits, just like putting your nose to the grindstone and toughening up and, discipline. And a lot of my close friends during that time period were athletes. They were stars of the football team, and they were working out. And whenever we were hanging out, we were working out, you know? And of course, again, getting into football, Friday Night Lights, Houston, Texas, football is everything.
That's right.
So, fitness and working out and lifting weights and just all of those things just kind of like bubbled up, right? And eventually, when I got ready to graduate high school, I was like, I don't know what I'm want to study. Like, obviously, going to go off to college, but let's entertain. Like, let's keep pushing this fitness stuff. This is really what I'm into, obviously, and I'll get through junior college, and when I get over to university, I'll see what my options are. Well, rewinding back to the end of freshman year of high school was my last year to play football because I suffered another injury. This was a sports related injury, but during a scrimmage at the beginning of season, I played wide receiver and free safety. I went out for, it was either like a slant route or a post route, high ball, went up to grab it, like full extension, big hang time, got my hands on the ball. No sooner did I get my hands on the ball, I got a helmet right in the middle of my low back. Flipped me over, laid on the ground. And it wasn't so much that I was in pain, but I knew something wasn't right.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to move because my first thought was like, holy shit, like, am I paralyzed?
Yeah,
like,
right.
I don't like this feeling, right? And trainer and the coach came up to me checking me out, like, hey, how you feeling? You okay? Can you walk? Can you move your legs? Do you know where you're at? Whatever. I'm like, I'm good. I'm just, I don't feel good. Like that was a good lick. And they stood me up, and the pain hit me immediately. And I was like, oh shit, like this is not good. This is not good. Sat on the sideline, finished the game, got undressed in the locker room, and went to go drive home. And I went to grab the overhead, like, oh shit bar in the truck to pull me up in the seat. Again, driving in Texas, I had a big truck.
Yeah.
I went to pull myself up into the truck, and I screamed and I was in so much pain. I almost like couldn't pull myself into the truck. I almost had to call my mom to come pick me up. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, what is going on? Something's not right. And went home, suffered for about a week, just dealing with it. I'm like, all right, well, maybe I just got a spasm. I don't know. Right. After about a week of dealing with this, and obviously I couldn't play. Like, I just couldn't. I could barely get around. And I went to the doctor against my coaches and athletic trainers' discretion at the time, because everybody was just like, put some ice on it, right? And so I go get an x-ray done and found out that I had what they call par fractures on my L4 and L5 vertebrae. And doctor was like, yeah, well, you're definitely not playing football for the rest of the season. And he's like, you're lucky you got to me when you did, because, you know, if you would have taken a few more hits, this could have been really bad for you. And, you know, just kind of hinting to me like you could have been in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, this just isn't worth it. Like, I love sports, I love football, but, you know, after broken elbows, broken wrists, broken fingers, toes, and now, you know, vertebrae, it's like, I'm done, man. I'm done with contact sports. And I actually got fitted for a custom made plaster brace, right? I went to this specialist, some ortho. I remember taking my shirt off, and he had this bucket of plaster and he had like a big paintbrush, and guy just started going to town. And again, this was like 2005, 2006. This dude's painting this plaster on me and just essentially waiting for it to harden up. And it took about like 20, 30 minutes. I could feel it like, you know, stiffening up or whatever. And he brings out like this little buzz saw, cuts it down the middle, and then peels it off of me. And he's like, all right, cool. Come back to me in a couple of days. I'll have it finished up for you. Well, this guy was like, he clearly knew what he was doing. He was like a fabricator, because I came back a few days later to come get my brace, and it's been polished. It's all shiny. It's got Velcro straps on it. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool looking. And it was basically like a plexi type cast, like all around my torso. I'm talking from like nipples to hip. Right? Yeah. I was immovable, right? And the only way, I mean, I could take it off, but there were 3 Velcro straps over the middle, right? And doc told me, he's like, you're gonna have to wear this for 3 months. And I was like, what? It's like 3 months. I was like, I mean, whatever. I had to wear a cast for other things. Like, you just got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
And you know, wore the brace. I still showed up to practice. I still practiced with the brace on, which, like, hindsight, like, I don't know why I did that. Like, you know, I was just, again, trying to be an athlete, just trying to show like, I'm here to play.
I'm here, coach. I'm here working.
Yeah, you know, I'm still here to work, whatever. But it really, in hindsight, it wasn't the best idea, because again, like, I was a receiver, and, you know, I could still go out and make catches, but when you got somebody hauling ass towards you trying to come knock you out, you cannot properly set yourself up to take a hit. You know, there's no really like tucking your shoulder and getting down and bucking up. Like, I just had to take it. And you know, fortunately I didn't get any more hurt than I already was, but, you know, that made things a little more difficult. Anyway, about a month and a half into it, doc cleared me. He's like, hey, you don't have to wear this 24/7 anymore, but, you know, definitely no more football for the rest of the season. I was like, all right, whatever. By that time, I was at a point in the agriculture career that my dad was like, hey, you know, your sister and one of my good friends at the time, they want to run the state circuit showing hogs. And, you know, there's a lot of money up for grabs. There's a lot of credentials up for grabs, and there's a lot of scholarships up for grabs. Like, you know, do you want to do this? Is it something that you think you might want to do? And I was like, Dad, I'll tell you what. I was like, I'll quit playing football and contact sports. I was like, I'll start showing pigs full time, and we'll go run the state. And so almost nearly every weekend of the rest of my high school career, me, my sister, my friend, and we wound up getting like a little team together. We were showing hogs all over the state of Texas. And you know, the hogs at the time, like, were my athletes, right? Those were, my projects. And we were good. We were very good. The organization that we worked through was called the Texas Junior Livestock Association. And, you know, and again, in the state of Texas, you could be driving, you know, up to 8-10 hours away just to go to a livestock show, which again is like what most people would think a rodeo is, right?
Right.
And, we would go show hogs and compete and rack up points and this and that. And again, that was just like another part of my life where, I just had that competitive desire, right? That desire to win, to work hard,
Yeah, it just
right?
shifted for you. It moved from
It did
yeah.
shift a little bit. And all the while I was, doing that and not playing football and contact sports, I was still hanging out in the weight room, right? I still wanted to hang out with my friends. I still wanted to be with the boys. At the high school that I went to, we had a powerlifting team, right? Bench, squat, deadlift. I was like, this is great. I'm going to join the team,
Let's
right?
go.
And that kind of like started another fire, right? And so I did powerlifting junior and senior year. And again, fast forwarding back to when I finally got into college and went to Texas State. I got my undergrad in exercise and sports science with a minor in sports psychology, and graduated fall of 2012. I took my first internship back home in Houston, January of 2013. And that was the like pivotal moment for me to like get where I am now. It was a non-paid internship across town, which across town in Houston is still like an hour away. Took 3 different highways to get there every single day. And this facility, this gym that I worked at, I found them on YouTube, right? And it was a facility called Genesis Athletic Performance, which is now known as Grindhouse Fitness, different ownership now. But I saw these guys on YouTube, and it was a strength conditioning facility. They work exclusively with athletes from high school to the professional level. And you can YouTube Genesis Strength. I think DC still has a bunch of his videos up there. But at the time, there were a lot of video reels of the coaches there working with the likes of like the Houston Texans and a lot of football players and MLB and stuff like that. And I was like, oh man, like this is awesome. Like I would love to be a part of something like this, right?
Yeah.
So I hit him up on YouTube and I was like, hey man, like shot in the dark. I literally posted a YouTube comment on one video. Like, hey, like shot in the dark, but are you guys hiring right now? And they're like, show up next week for this training session and we'll
No
talk.
shit.
Like, oh,
Let's
all right, bet.
go.
So I showed up and I'm dressed out, ready to work. Don't really know what to expect. It's a big warehouse facility. Again, this is industrial side of Houston. And they're like, oh, you came on a good day. I'm like, all right, what does that mean? And they're like, the boys are about to be here. And I'm like, well, I kind of figured there would be males showing up to the facility. There's a big RV coming around the backside. And I see Houston Texans logo and insignia on it. And I was like, what the fuck? And like all of these things just racing through my head. Like I drove an hour away to get here and I'm about to be like ringside working with the Houston Texans. And I'm thinking in my head, like, I'm not getting paid a dime and it doesn't even matter.
That's
because
right.
I would pay money
Absolutely.
to come watch, much like many other people do for other sports teams, right? So needless to say, I had an internship at Genesis for like 8 months, and bar none, like one of the most fun experiences of my life. I mean, we worked again with professional athletes. We had D1 guys, of course. We had numerous high schools across the county that would come see us for training, and that really like ignited my love and appreciation for strength conditioning specifically, right?
Yeah.
And after I finished that internship there, I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to work with athletes. Like, I've got the skill set, at least I thought I did at the time. And I'm like, this is what I want to pursue. And found out very quickly that it's not that easy to reel in that clientele, right?
Yeah.
And if you get that clientele, you're not gonna have them for forever. You know what I mean? And marketing and all of that jazz. I was 21, 22 years old at the time. I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. So I had to be like everybody else at the time. I started out at 24-hour fitness, and I worked at a couple of different 24-hour fitness locations, and quickly moved up the ladder and realized like, oh man, like I'm really not making a lot of money. And I had a degree, I was the only one on the team at these franchise locations with degree. And not at the time, it was cool to have like as many certifications as possible, right? That meant that you were like the best. But I had a couple, but I thought that they were really, really valuable, right? I had my CSCS and I got my Kettlebell cert, and I'm like, I'm good. Like, I'll learn other things, but I'm not going to be doing all these certs, right? So anyway, I reached the ceiling with 24, and I was like, you know what? I got to do something different, because I can't just be slaving away working for pennies, right? And fast forwarding through some other life scenarios and whatnot, eventually opened up a door to South Florida. My sister-in-law is from Boca Raton. And
Gotcha.
at the time, I had just gotten out of my first marriage. I just settled a divorce like end of 2013, going into 14. And, I didn't really know where I was going to end up. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Obviously, super depressed and all these things that I'm dealing with in my head. My sister-in-law told me, she was like, hey, if you want to go back to school, if you ever thought about doing graduate school, there's this really cool program at this school in Boca called FAU. And I was
Let's
like,
go, fellow owls.
send me some info, right? So she sent me some info. I'm doing my research. I'm checking out the school. I'm looking at the exercise science program. And again, mind you, this is like 2014. And I'm like, oh man, like this looks really cool. South Florida, like I've got distant family in Florida. Obviously love the beach. I know fitness is a huge scene down there. This could be really great for my career long term. Da 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 da. So I'm just weighing out my options. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna start this new journey, and I'm moving to South Florida. And I had to break it to my parents. I'm like, listen, like at the time I was like, I just can't be in Texas right now. Like everything is just, it's negative, negative, negative. I can't be here in this environment. I was like, I need to start something new. So, my parents were very, very supportive of me moving down here, and of course, continuing my education. And there was a girl that I was talking to at the time, who's now my wife and mother of my 7-year-old. And I got to talk with my then girlfriend and was like, hey, listen, I'm getting ready to move down to South Florida. I don't really know anybody. I'm going to, try to find a place to live. Like, you want to hang out sometime? And she was like, yeah, sure. So, one thing led to another. And, obviously I'm happily married now. I've got a kid and a house and whatnot. But I started going to school at FAU. And at the time, my first job in South Florida was in Boynton Beach, and it was at a 24-hour location. It's like,
welcome back.
It's something like I got to make a few bucks, right? Yeah. Needless to say, that 24 has since closed down since the pandemic. I wasn't even there a month. Like it was an absolute joke. There was like no man there. And I left 24 and took a gig at a little place called Hard Exercise Works in Delray Beach.
Okay. Yeah. Hugh, let's
Delray
go, man.
Beach. And the owner at the time, girl's name is Danielle McDuffie, who is one of my good friends. And she's a big time like semi-pro CrossFitter now. And of course, she's all booed up with babies and whatnot. But I was working at Hard Exercise Works for like practically minimum wage, right? And I'm doing these group classes, and I was in the CrossFit realm before, but Hugh is obviously a lot different. And after about like 6 months, I was like, I'm getting paid minimum wage to be teaching these people how to do handstand push-ups and chest to bar and wall walks and all this crazy shit. And I'm like, I'm not getting medical benefits for this. I'm like, this is not it. This is not it. I was like, I got to figure something else out. Well, down in South Florida, there's a lot of country clubs down here.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously my wife and my in-laws, like they know people, and I've got family that, live in country clubs throughout the county, and started putting some feelers out. And I got a gig at the Polo Club of Boca Raton. And
Nice.
Polo Club was my home for the better part of accumulatively about 6 years. And I started out as a fitness professional, as they call it. And that was a whole new environment for me in a number of ways. Like, I'd never been to a country club before. And for those that don't know, like at the time, the Polo Club was, one of the big dogs. It's like number one, number two in the state, like one of the top 10 in the nation, like very hoity-toity, older Jewish crowd, like obviously 55 and up, but really like 75 and up, and big golfing community, big tennis community, and a absolutely gorgeous multi-million-dollar fitness center. That was the most fun place to work, just because of the toys that they had there. And I came from working with athletes and Gen
Big
Pop,
transition, man.
and then I had another transition going into the geriatric setting. And obviously it was very scary, it's a little nerve-wracking, but I picked it up very quickly and developed the skill set that I really stand behind with all of my clients now, which is, at the time when you get somebody in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, right? There's not a whole lot that they can do for the most part. And you have to kind of meet them where they're at, right? And there's no need to sit here and get fancy with your exercise selection and stress about how you're going to program and all of these things that just like, they don't matter.
That's right.
And it's not applicable to this population. So, I wound up learning how to just, again, meet the client where they're at with their individual needs. Like, okay, can you sit down and stand up out of a chair?
Yep.
Can you, do a few push-ups off of a countertop, right? Obviously, we're doing a lot of band work and balance and stuff like that. So again, like, trial by fire, but I picked it up very quickly and was very successful there. I was there for about 6 years. I was like head fit pro for a while. Excuse me. Took a 2-year stunt, moved actually back to Texas with my wife and my daughter, who was like less than a year old at the time, for a job that didn't pan out, and got stuck in Texas for 2 years. And that was a whole ordeal. But I came back to the Polo Club 2019. This was right before the pandemic.
Yep.
And I came back to the Polo Club to do management in the fitness center. I was fitness manager and spa manager as well. And it was essentially like unofficially assistant to the director, right? So it was a big career move for me. And there was a lot of stability there. I wasn't going to have to
more like
hustle,
administrative kind of thing.
It was like half and half, like some administrative, some training, but I didn't have to stress about, keeping clients, right? And that season, 2019, 2020, was the best season that fitness center in that club had ever seen. Like, we grossed almost 1.5 million.
Holy shit.
In personal training sales. And mind you, that team at the time, I was managing 25 personal trainers. We had 25 trainers on staff, and everybody was booked from like 7 a.m. to at least noon, 1 o'clock.
That's what's up. That's what's up, man.
And in that environment, when you're booked, like, you literally have 2 minutes in between sessions.
Yep.
For that amount of time. And it was good money. It was great work. And I was doing the managerial stuff, and then COVID hit.
Yep.
The pandemic hit, and we were on lockdown, and gyms were closing left and right, and people were dying. And like, again, I worked in an elderly community. Like, people were dropping left and right. There was chaos, there was pandemonium. You would have thought this was like Armageddon, right? And I was sitting here on this patio in my backyard for a good, like, let's see, this was February. I was out of work through February through about June. And we came back in June, and nobody knew like what was going to happen. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was a ghost town. Nobody was coming to the gym. Everybody's masked up. Everybody is like, there was that crazy just like pandemonium, like,
Yeah.
the fear mongering with masks,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just not knowing what this disease was actually doing or capable of, and what was going on, and talks of vaccines and all. You remember, it was just crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we got called back in June. We had to completely flip all of our protocols and figure out how we're going to operate going forward in a COVID friendly manner. And everything is 6 feet distance. And I remember we had to rope off like every other piece of
Yep.
equipment at one point to keep the social distancing and just all that craziness, right? And then the layoffs started happening, and I survived the first layoff, but unfortunately, I had to break the news to all these people that I worked with, like, we're gonna have to let you go. I'm sorry. And I hated that. I
Yeah.
absolutely hated that. That was a horrible, horrible time for me. And of course, I wound up losing my position within a month later. So then I was out of work. And you go through the unemployment process and all of that garbage. And again, like, there's still, as far as fitness is concerned, there's not a lot of gyms open. People are very hesitant.
Yeah.
At home training is booming, but and like virtual training is booming, but there's still just a lot of uncertainty, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I kind of took a break for a bit with fitness. I mean, I had like one or two privates here and there, but I started doing pool work.
Mm.
Family friend of mine owns a pool plastering company down in Delray Beach. And he was like, I need somebody just to do some labor work for me. And I was like, well, I'm good for that.
Yep. There you
So,
go.
and that actually was a really fun job. I was doing a lot of just cosmetic work, just chipping plaster and putting on tile, and showing up to work in these multi-million-dollar homes, and giving people these beautiful brand new pools, right? And I got to work down in the Keys, and I got paid by the hour. So for me, I was like one of the only guys taking these jobs down in the Keys. And I would drive 2 to 4 hours to get down
Yeah.
there, do an hours or two worth of work, and then drive home. And that was a
Yeah.
full day. And that was great, for a little bit, but it didn't pay the bills long term, and unemployment was about to be done. So I had to figure out, like, all right, what am I going to do now? And then let's see, what was it? 2021, 2022, 2021, I think. I jumped on with Hustle Training 360. And at the time, Sean and Nikki Nelson were some acquaintances that I've known as long as I'd been in South Florida. They used to be clients of mine when I did group classes at Pitt Fitness down in Boca. And they gave me an opportunity to do at-home training and basically be my own boss. And this was immediately following like the post-pandemic era, like everything's opening back up. Obviously, Florida's wide open.
Mm-hmm.
And that was great for a while. And it got to a point where, again, I hit another ceiling very quickly. I maxed out my capabilities and my income, essentially. It was also maxing out my expenses, because although I was very busy, I was driving half the day.
Yeah.
And I had clients anywhere from,
Gas ain't cheap right now, man.
yeah, dude. And I was driving anywhere from West Boca to Loxahatchee.
Yep.
And you can try to strategize and put people next to each other in your books as tight as you can, but it's not always going to stay that way, right?
Yep.
And there was just a lot of things that I just was no longer looking to essentially put up with anymore, and just in terms of logistics. And we mutually agreed to part ways to some extent. And I, just was like in another place where I was like, do I really want to keep doing this? Do I really want to just keep hustling and worrying about when my next dollar is going to get here and stressing over clients and keeping books and all this stuff? And even thinking about it right now, like my head's just getting foggy. But, I had just recently at the same time just started working with the Axiom crew.
Yes.
And, showing up for some workshops and seminars and just chipping in, and then eventually being offered a position to teach. And I really loved it. I loved teaching. I loved helping people that actually wanted to be helped.
Yeah.
Right. And not to say that none of my clients never wanted to be helped, but as well as I do, more often than not, majority of the people, like, they don't really want to work out.
Yeah.
Right. And more often than not, most days they're not, this is not what they want to do. Right. They know they need to do it.
Yes.
They're appreciative of me being there and my
Yes.
knowledge and my
They want a social hour. They want to be healthier, but yeah, we all know how it is.
Especially like the longer that you're with them, they get more comfortable with you.
Absolutely.
So anyway, I really fell in love with teaching, and I was like, you know what? My wife is a teacher. She's a teacher over at American Heritage in Delray.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna entertain the teaching route, but like full time. And I got my teaching certification with the school district in Palm Beach County. And that was a whole process because I had gotten an interview at a few different schools and some offers here and there. One particular interview at Spanish River High, one of my very close friends who's the assistant athletic director there kind of put my name in the hat. And of course, my wife, being a teacher, she knows a lot of teachers, talked to her people talked to those people. One thing led to another. Got an interview with the principal. This was late June, early July of this year. And she offered me a teaching position. And she's like, if you can get all your teaching credentials, then, you can work with the athletic department. And I was like, bet.
That's awesome.
And so I started working on all that stuff, getting paperwork done, drug screenings, all that jazz, and studying for the teaching exams. Those exams are no joke, by the way. I was offered a position to teach in the ESE department, which for those that don't know is the not exercise and sport science, exceptional student education, which is essentially sort of like special needs, but you're working with kids with learning disabilities, behavioral issues, stuff of that nature, right? Not like the traditional like physical impairments that you're used to seeing with other kids, right? And so, I was considered to be a like what they call a push in. So I'm pushed into multiple classrooms throughout the day, so on and so forth. Anyway, I went to go take the exam. I want to say like 3 weeks before the first day of school, and I failed the exam, and was like, "Oh, now what? Like, if I don't have a passing score, like I can't take this job, and then like who knows what's gonna happen?" So big meltdown, panic attack, don't know what I'm gonna do. Was calling like all of my people in the administration. Was like, what do I do next? Like, there's got to be something else. Like, can I take another test? And they're like, well, why don't you hurry up and take the PE test, and if you pass that, then you're good, like we'll clear you. And I was like, oh, thank God. So I kid you not, I had less than 2 weeks to take this PE exam before the first day of school. And I'm studying like a maniac. I studied harder for that exam than I ever did in my academic career. Like, I was putting in like easily 4 hours a day, flashcards, ripping pages out of textbook, putting them up on the wall, highlighting stuff. Like, it was like a crime scene investigation. Needless to say, I passed my exam the day before the first day of school.
Wow.
And like, it couldn't have been like more crunch time, right? So I thank God I got the job, got the position, got in with the school district. And that first month, of school really just kind of flew by because, I'm getting integrated into the school system. I'm meeting all of my colleagues and students and, learning about classroom management and just the ESE stuff, and then getting introduced with the football team, like all of these things. Right. But now we've been in about a month and a half, and I've kind of settled in. I've got my little routine down, and now's where the growth starts, right? Like I mentioned earlier, our football team is now 4-0. This is the best record that the team has had in a good decade. They scored more points in the first 3 games than they did all of last season. So we've got a lot of momentum behind us right now. We've won 2 district games, and I'm just having a lot of fun with it. I love my kids. I love my football team, and the wheels inside the athletic department are really starting to spin, because now word is getting out like, oh, we have a strength conditioning coach. Oh, the football team is doing badass right now. Like, everybody wants a piece of the action, which I was hoping that was what was gonna happen, right? Yeah. So, with the way the school district's set up, I technically can only accrue like 1 stipend per season. So work with 1 team per season. So right now I have football during the fall. I will have boys weightlifting during the winter. And then come springtime, it's anybody's game. Everybody's going to have to draw straws. I've got basketball wanting some action. I've got track wanting some action. I've got lacrosse wanting some action. And I'm hoping long term, obviously it's not going to happen this year, but within the next maybe 1 to 3 years, developing a coordinator type position, like a lot of more advanced athletic departments have at their high schools, where they have a strength conditioning coordinator or like a performance director or whatever you want to call it, that can manage all of the athletic teams and their strength conditioning. And that's long term what I'm shooting for at this point. But it's my first year. I'm taking my time and just letting everything kind of sink in and riding the wave. And I'm loving it, man. And here we are. I've got a nice, stable career now. I've got a pension going. I've got amazing benefits, and I'm riding the wave, man.
That's what's up, dude. Seriously, appreciate you taking the time to share about just life, dude, because oftentimes it's not always a very linear path, as young fitness professionals need to know, man. So many cool little nuggets there. And I always like ask about this one because I'm generally curious about people in my area, like where they grew up with, how they came about and all that stuff. And like I said, it's funny to find out, we're fellow FAU alums. I had no idea that you went to FAU, man.
Man. I don't tell too many people about it because I actually did finish the program. I dropped out, but I did, and I'm glad that I did, because at the time I felt like I got what I needed out of it. I got in strength conditioning program design class. I got in the biomechanics class. Yeah. I got in, maybe 1 or 2 more. And then after that, it seemed like at the time, the rest of my course load was all like pre-med stuff.
Right.
It's super advanced physiology, advanced cardio work, which I respect, but I didn't feel like spending all of that time and education and out-of-state tuition at the time,
of course,
was going to benefit me in the long run. Because the goal for me for a very long time was to be a strength conditioning coach for a collegiate sports team. Mm-hmm. And, that's still been the dream for a very long time. But
oh, Kyle, real quick, bud, your mic cut out.
Mm-mm. Hear me now?
There we go.
Cool. So yeah, like, the average strength coach at a university at the time was getting paid like 40, 50 grand a year. And I was like, I'm not going to end up with all this student debt just for that to happen. So
100%.
I called it quits when I needed to. And again, like, I got what I needed out of it. And it's still very useful information, what I took from that program.
Yeah.
And it's
Almost like
really
mini certs for the classes, essentially, you know?
right. And again, it has really sculpted, my skill sets.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was overall, it was a good experience.
Yeah, man. It's funny because we might have been on campus at the same time because I
That's
started
You're probably
undergrad in
right.
2014.
Yeah,
That's
you're
so
probably right.
funny. Might have seen you at the gym. Who knows? I might have just walked past and never had even known that we were at the
Right.
same place at the same time. I
Yeah,
find that
man.
stuff so cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Small world, man.
Yes, sir. And I do really appreciate, I always tell coach this, man, like that you growing up in Texas on, kind of more rural, like working class kind of style of living, man, that really like forges, like you said, your character. And like you said, just like the manual labor side of thing. The first thing I thought about when I'm thinking about you like carrying like farm animals and that those 50-pound sacks of grain or whatever, man, I'm thinking like
Yeah.
this is a modern day Milo of Croton, man. He just carrying all this stuff, getting bigger over time.
Yeah, well, the getting bigger part was the struggle, but the appreciation for, just again pushing yourself and getting stronger and whatnot, like that, those things stick with you for sure.
Absolutely, man. And I can appreciate, you mentioning that first experience of working at Genesis and seeing those athletes, man. One of my favorite experiences. I did an internship for my undergrad program at a place called, well, at the time it was called Impact Sports. Now it's called FTX.
Yeah,
And so getting to work with like, one day it's you got guys coming in who are going to the combine, and the next day it's professional baseball player. And then it's like Lynn University, like men's lacrosse. And it's like every day it was just like the awe of being around these athletes. And because it was in the private sector too, it's like people who like wanted to be there came out of their time to go there and get extra like help for like either professional or collegiates or even like youth athletes as well. And so those experiences, man, were definitely like awe-inspiring for sure.
oh yeah, they stick with you, man.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, cool, brother. Kind of the last thing I want to touch on then, you kind of hinted at it a little bit here, talking about like your background, how you got into fitness, but I always like to hear about people's like philosophy when it comes to coaching. So obviously you've had a wide experience when it comes to, whether it's high school athletes or working with professional people or whatever it is, but do you kind of find yourself having like an overarching philosophy when it comes to how you approach coaching in general?
Yeah, again, just kind of recapping everything. I've worked in a lot of different settings. I've worked with a lot of different people, different age groups, different capabilities. I've worked with young kids in elementary school, all the way to professional athletes, and obviously the elderly. I've worked with Paralympians. I've worked with people that have missing limbs. And it really, after having all of those experiences, it all just comes back to, again, meeting the client where they're at, right? And it doesn't matter what their goal is or what their current capabilities are. You meet them where they're at and you build them there, right? We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're not trying to, just try to get them to be the most advanced as quickly as possible, right? I'm trying to meet them where they're at, get them in a comfortable, sustainable routine that they can adhere to and progress from. And then, after about 6 months or so, then we can really start talking about, how we're going to program long term and whatnot. But again, just meeting the client's needs in terms of their own personal development is the biggest thing that you can do in terms of just being a good coach and being a good personal trainer, right?
Absolutely.
And getting back to the fundamental movement patterns, push, pull, squat, hinge, lunge, carry. I still stand by that. That's what we preach at Axiom, and the regressions and progressions that come along with that, and using those hierarchies of movement patterns to essentially be the forefront of how you do program design.
Absolutely, man. I tell people all the time, 80 to 90% of fitness, like outside of like the super advanced extremes of certain things like bodybuilding, strength and conditioning, it's pretty much all the same thing packaged just a little bit differently, right? You have the primary movement patterns. It's the, how do I develop my aerobic and anaerobic systems? How do I, move with good form that makes them feel better and have more productivity in their lifts, right? All that is like the same. What is like a little bit different is like, what's your ability to do things? What are your limitations? What's your experience? And then also like, how can I make the session engaging? Like at the end of the day, you do those few things. It really doesn't matter at the end of the day, like what you do. And
Yeah.
so you may get to a point where I have to change things because they've been with me so long and they've gotten so advanced. It's like, hey, this isn't really working anymore. Now we got to do some of these more, in my opinion, like the fun advanced things, or like the strength and conditioning athletic things. But you don't have to do all this crazy weird stuff. You can do the basics and just tweak it just a little bit and get so much benefit from it.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And, I do still put my personal touch on things.
Of
Again,
course.
I've got the powerlifting background, the strongman background, the kettlebell background, and just the athletic background.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't matter if you're an actual athlete or you're just a 75-year-old man living your retired best life.
Yeah.
We're going to work hard.
Absolutely.
We're going to do things that suck. We're going to do heavy compound lifts.
Yes.
I'm going to, sometimes give you something heavy to carry and see how far you can take it.
Yep.
Because like, not for nothing, a lot of these things that I'm giving clients and my athlete, like these are real world scenarios. Like these are things that you need to know how to do.
Yes.
Right. And, just to give another example, right? So I'm working with the football team, and beginning of the school year was great because we were the only guys using the weight room. Well, now the other teams are getting together for the fall and we got to split the weight room, right? We got to share. So I have the boys in the weight room Tuesdays and Thursdays, right? So in season, not a big deal. Like I'll settle for 2 days a week, whatever. We also have, because we can't be in the weight room Mondays and Wednesdays and got games on Fridays, we'll do field practice before they go to skills practice. So, we get our speed and agility stuff in. I bring the med balls out. We get all kinds of throws and jumps, and we work on our isometrics and stuff that we normally don't have room for inside the weight room. And so that's always good. But, I'll also, for the sake of not being in the weight room, I've been, getting my football guys. I'm like, all right, partner up, get somebody similar size and strength or skill position, and I'll give them a second to partner up. And we go through a number of drills. A lot of the stuff, that I've picked up through me playing football, through strongman training, but also through guys like Elliot Hulse and Zach Evan, all of that underground strength training and stuff. A lot of that underground strength training, a lot of the calisthenics stuff, right? I've been able to implement on the football field. So I'll tell the boys like, all right, we got piggybacks today. I remember the first day that, I had them do that. They were like, what? We're doing piggyback rides? And they're like, oh, hell yeah. Like, let's do it. Well, it sounds like fun, right? You and your boys just hanging out and we're doing piggyback rides across the football field. But when you get somebody of similar size and or heavier on your back, and then I tell you to carry them for 40 to 50 yards in the hot Florida sun, like that's no joke. That's no joke. Not. But, that's where we get our GPP in. That's where we get our conditioning in. That's when we get that mental toughness. We do piggyback rides. I also have the guys do like kind of a half Nelson or just like a front carry. So I'll literally have them simulate like a soft tackle. And then pick them up and then carry them for distance. Right. And I think that, again, it's super important, not only for core strength, but, just stability in the tackle, getting guys more comfortable with tackling, getting their hands on the other guy and just wrapping up. All of those things are like prerequisite skills to a tackle in football, right? In contact sports.
Absolutely.
And, we've been implementing a lot of these strategies over the last few weeks, and it started out fun in the very beginning, and then they realized how much it sucks. And, there's, with that general adaptation phase, they're resistant to it now, but they're starting to appreciate the gains that they're getting from it, right? And then I get comments after training or like after a game, like, "Oh, coach, like I'm so pumped that we've been doing all this stuff on the field in the weight room because I really feel it. Like,
that's right.
I feel like it's making me better. Like I'm playing better. I'm hitting harder. I'm doing this. I'm doing that." And again, we've only been getting together for a month and a half now. So, that again, that's what gets me going, dude. That's what gets me
Absolutely,
going.
man. Yeah, seeing them benefit and feeling it and seeing it on game day, man, that's what makes it all worth it at the end,
Oh,
brother.
that's right. That's
Yes,
right.
sir. Well, dude, I really appreciate your time again. Thank you so much for, letting us know about your fitness journey. Like I said, a lot of young coaches and fitness pros listen to this. So I think hearing the different ways that they can dovetail into their career is going to be hugely beneficial for them. Can you just kind of let people know where to find you, where to connect, anything you want to plug here?
Yeah, for sure. For anybody doing social media, you can find me on Facebook. I don't really do Facebook too much. Probably do a lot more on Instagram, but you can find me at Lone Star Strength. So that's lone underscore star underscore strength. Pretty easy to find there. Again, I'm the strength conditioning coach at Spanish River High School down in Boca. So I'm usually tied up with the school most days, but I occasionally make time for some private clients here and there. The fall holidays are coming up. I'll be out of school, so I might be looking to do some side gigs here and there in the short term. But this is where I'm at, man. Palm Beach County. I've been here on and off for over a decade now, but this is my home. I'm going to be here for a very long time. I hope to be at Spanish River for a very long time, and I'm got 2 feet in with this new journey. I'm going to ride it out for as long as I can.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Appreciate that. I'll be sure to put that link down in the description down below. Again, y'all know where to find me. Socials, we got daily content on Instagram, YouTube Shorts, and TikTok at _shift_method. We got the weekly YouTube, the weekly podcast style videos. We got the merch. We got it all, y'all. You can head to theshiftmethod.org to check that all out. And as always, appreciate y'all for watching. Kyle, thank you so much again, man. Hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. All right.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for having me, and thanks for letting me rant for an hour and a half.
Heck yeah, man. It's good for the people. Later, everyone.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thanks, man.